And we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my meditation today. I got a late start. I normally start this around 10 o'clock in the morning here, and it's noon. And that's actually because of I'm trying to make sure that all of this technology actually works. So this is as much a one of my regular meditations, but it's also a test of all the technology I want to use for satsang and other important events. Those of you who were at satsang last week, I actually had to shut everything down and go to a different place because everything just cutting in and out. Um, and I want to have the most high quality presentation I possibly can. So I'm actually trying out my really good camera, all the stuff here, sitting in the park uh, with my hotspot and to see if in fact it works. This would prove that it is my internet connection at home. Uh, so this is much of a test of me and my technology as it is the event. So thank you all for participating in this. Let's see if it gets to the entire thing. Doesn't look like it's going to rain on me, so I think we're good. I may have to just do satsangs here and um, and some other events I have going until such a time as I can move to a different space and have a better connection. So, all that said, please say hello where you're watching from. And if this is the first time you've ever joined me on a meditation, this is really useful for me to know. Um, so far, everything is working beautifully. So, Himonk, hello, Himonk. Good to see you. Good to see you, sir. Mr. Miyagi is in El Paso, Texas. Did you tell me that before? Hmm, I don't remember. I don't remember that. Keb, Keb, Kabdavian is in L.A. and it's cloudy there too. Good to see you there. Bridget Ann Walsh, GP. I'm in the UK. Wonderful, Bridget. Great to see you. Ava, what a wonderful surprise. Namaste, dear G. Happy to know you now, Bridget. And Kuhulika. Namaste from India. Oh, you're new to my live meditation. And it must be like what 11:30 myself. Back to audio. Okay, you should all be able to hear me now. Wow. Robbie in Romania, hello. Mr. August laughing. Yes, technology. Technology. Ah, my entire career, livelihood, everything depends on it. And all of a sudden it dies. Oh my goodness, I hope it's just that I've just put fresh batteries in it and it's broken. I'm hoping my device is not broken. Anyway, please please let me know that you can hear me again. I'm just trying. We're good. Yes, thank you. Hi Rosario, good to see you too. Ah, the technology is both the biggest blessing and biggest curse in my life. I wouldn't be able to be doing this if it wasn't for technology. But it seems like every time I do something, something else breaks. I hear you, Patricia in Los Angeles. Hello, nice to see you too. So, anyways, I was saying, uh, the titles come to me for these meditations, and then all of a sudden, I realize I have to speak about it. It's as if the angels plant the seed and then say, "Go get them, boy. Have fun." It's But I have to say, it's a really nice way to live. I've never been much of a planner. I've never been much of an organizer. Um, Even at the jobs I had where I was making these really elaborate and complex computer systems, I didn't do any of the organization. I wasn't with the project leader. I was the creative guy in the back room that that just made things work. Um, it, and so the spontaneity has always been something that's been quite natural to me, and I know that it isn't for a lot of people. Um, and it's something that I think we can all learn to cultivate. Looks like I'm not talking about love. I'm talking about spontaneity and intuition, and maybe love will come up somewhere along the line. Uh, I think what happens is that a lot of us get conditioned. Look at our school system. The school system in the West, at least, um, just sucks. It just sucks. It's totally inhuman. It doesn't prepare you to to think. It doesn't prepare you for critical reasoning, let alone higher reasoning. Um, it doesn't prepare you to actually become uh, enamored, to fall in love with a subject to the point where you don't need to be forced to study it. That you just love it so much that you do it. I mean, um, somebody, you get a report card from the school for your child, and the report card says, it's got C's and D's in math, and he said, he's really really creative, and really has a lot of fun on the playground. Very athletic, but he really got to work on the math. Why don't they say, this is kid's a natural artist, or he's a natural athlete. Screw the math. Put to the side. What do we need to do for them to enhance what they're really good at? We don't do that in the school, right? Instead, instead we have to have people. We force people to focus on they not only don't like, but they're not even good at. So what's the point? The problem um, is that it gets so ingrained in us in such a young age that we get this idea that we're always supposed to be doing what we don't like doing. We're always supposed to be deferring to something, to some other state. And what happens when you're forced to do something that you're not really interested in? Is there this wellspring of creativity and enthusiasm and passion? Right? Is there this spontaneity, this playfulness that arises? Absolutely not. Exactly the opposite takes place. So spontaneity, I think, comes from really falling in love with something. When you fall in love with something, the information, the knowledge about it just comes very naturally. Right? It isn't a chore. It's a curiosity. It's an exploration. Life becomes fun. Learning becomes fun. Learning isn't learning anymore. It's not like the school stuff. It's just pure absorption. And what happens when you're really absorbed in something, all sorts of creative stuff begins to flow. All sorts of creative energy and creative juice begins to flow. It becomes very spontaneous and playful. The more you know something, the easier it is to do. It's like when you're riding a bike. At first, it's very wobbly, but eventually, right? It's stable, it's strong. You're going fast. You're leaning into corners. No hands. Right? It becomes playful. But that's because nobody forces you, to ride a bike. You want to do it. And then as you do it, you feel the freedom in it. And that freedom is where the creativity comes from. That's where spontaneity comes from. That's when it's just the pure juice of life. I have no idea why I got off on that subject, but here we are. And so, as always, as I do a meditation, the meditations don't have a goal. Right? They're not here to accomplish something. You don't do a meditation in order to get something. We do meditation in order to awaken to something, to discover something, to discover ourselves, and to discover ourselves in such a way that we fall in love with what we discover. It's a completely different approach than you'll hear most of the time about meditation, which is usually some kind of goal. I'm trying to clear the mind, or I'm trying to quiet the stuff, or I'm trying to manifest something. There's all sorts of different reasons. The only reason I think um, meditation is valuable is that it brings you to you. It brings you to the the most significant discovery a human being can make, and that is who you actually are. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. Linus, the best word for our school system is bulimic. I agree. We need a completely different mode of education. But the highest education we can get is the knowledge of ourselves. Because when you discover yourself, you find that infinite pool of intelligence that is at the root of your being. So close your eyes. And for the next few moments, just leave aside all distractions, leave aside all um, questions, leave aside all comments, leave aside the mind. Now, that doesn't mean make the mind be quiet. Uh, First off, you can't do it. And the amount of effort expended trying is a waste. So when I say set aside the mind, I mean just don't engage with thinking. Don't follow the narrative. Thoughts are going to be there, they're going to come and go, but you always have the choice to decide whether or not you're going to hook onto a thought and follow it down a story, or you're just going to notice it and let it pass by. You always have the power to do that. And so, with your eyes closed, and this conscious choice to not engage with the mind, where's your attention go? Just notice, where does your attention go? Our attention by nature is always looking for something. And now it's not the mind, it's not the visual world. Notice how it begins to just kind of sink into the body. It begins to feel. Now, as you're feeling your body, don't even use the word body. I have to use these words to guide you. But I want you to look beyond the words. Because the word body and our idea of a body is thought. So instead of thinking about what you're feeling or labeling, just feel the pure experience of the body and your own being. Now, this can be, especially if this is new to you, a little bit like riding the bike, right? It'll feel very unstable. We're not used to just feeling. We're used to always having thoughts about the feelings. There's always a narrative that goes with it. So you can see the feeling itself doesn't require a narrative. It's very present. It's very much in this moment. Now, doing this for any period of time, your mind will get a bit antsy. Go, okay, now what? No, now what? And now what is always an attempt to bring something artificial into the pure experience of just feeling. It's an attempt to make this moment just a stepping stone to some other moment, rather than the pure experience in this moment. The mind will also ask, well, what benefit is this? What is this doing for me? Well, on the surface, nothing. Because being and the pure direct experience of being doesn't serve a purpose other than itself. It's not here to satisfy or serve some mental picture. But as you're just feeling without a narrative, notice how quiet it is. Even though the body, you may be feeling some tension or pain or various emotions running through it, but notice that there's this quiet background to it. There's kind of this stillness. This is the natural stillness of this present moment. which we normally don't experience because we're lost in thought. And yet here it is. It's not being manufactured or imagined. This isn't a visualization. It's an actual experience of yourself. Now, this is what is. Everything else that you normally experience is actually a story about this. And that story is simply the result of education, enculturation, training, conditioning, which means it's arbitrary and fictional. This is what actually is. Notice it's very subtle, it's very energetic, but do you also notice that no matter how subtle it is, you're here perceiving it. So what does that make you? Even more subtle than the subtlest experience. And notice there's feelings and sensations going on that are so subtle, we don't have any words for them. There's just this sense of presence, this energy field. And you, aware of it. And notice here, without any reference to the mind or the ego or the sense of identity, there's no limits here. Limits are all in the mind. There's nothing constraining this pure intelligence. There's nothing restricting it. There's nothing confining it. All of that is in the mind. This is the ground of being here. This is the place to put down your roots. Again, it's going to feel a little unstable simply because there's nothing really here that you're used to. There's nothing really, there's not like a solid picture, a solid sense of identity. And yet, are you not here? Have you ever felt more present than right here and right now? Even though we don't have a name for it, it's not some kind of object you can hold and identify with. And yet it's very solid, isn't it? Just this sense of being, this presence, like a field of energy. It's very solid. It's not going anywhere. It can't. It's you. Everything arises out of this, what Buddha called emptiness, shunyata. He didn't mean nothingness. He meant simply that the infinite cannot be contained in any form. So, what you're feeling right now is the infinite, the eternal, the timeless and spaceless, also known as you. So, take a nice deep breath, move your body a little bit, and open your eyes. And welcome back. Carrie joined from Australia. Susan, beautiful where you are. Yeah, it is beautiful here. This is a very old historic park with some ruins of an entire Pueblo village, which was actually quite prosperous until they got conquered by the Spanish, which turned them into slaves, which built the ruins of the cathedral that are over there, which they then revolted. It's a marvelous history here in New Mexico. Sean the Humble says, greetings from Scotland. Hi from Madrid from Roberto. Hello, Roberto. Roberto says, GP, lately it feels like I'm going back to my former situation. Fear, crying. Is it normal to go back to that? It's like I am not improving. Thank you. And I'm sorry to bother you with this stuff. It's no bother. It's what I do, right? I mean, I chose this life and I'm very happy with it. So, um, yes, of course it's normal. Remember that your nervous system is a creature of habit, right? That's what it does. I mean, that's all it does is create automatic habitual behaviors to react to circumstances. Now these get deeply ingrained into the body, and of course the the more trauma that we've been through, uh, especially in our younger years, where we did not feel safe or loved or anything like that, the deeper these uh, automatic patterns of defense run, the more deeply ingrained into the body. These patterns, because they create this underlying assumption, not a mental assumption. I call them energetic assumptions about the nature of reality, which makes sense because, oh, if reality is like this, then this is how I respond. And so the it's reluctant. It's very slow to acknowledge that the environment has changed. It just assumes it stays the same. That's how it stays and feels safe. So when you begin when consciousness emerges, and you begin consciously beginning to see what is conditioning and what is myself, there can be moments of great breakthrough, right? When suddenly everything's fine, right? There's just moments of calm and the like. But the message hasn't gotten all the way in yet. And some little thing in the environment can trigger it, and suddenly it's right back in that same position. The remedy is always the same. Remedy is exactly what you've been doing. No matter what feeling comes up, it, you simply be with it. Now, the more you are with the feeling, like I did in this meditation, and I think you got here after I'd already started it. So go back and listen. What I did was I simply brought it to the point where you were just feeling with no story. Now, look at that feeling. A feeling of fear comes up, a feeling of sadness, which is crying. And then the mind says, oh, I'm going back to my former situation. I haven't made any progress at all, right? Well, none of that is actually in this. What are you experiencing in this moment? Fear, crying, some emotion, right? Now, what is that if you don't attach it to the past or the future? I'm going back to my old self. I'm not improving. Those are just thoughts trying to interpret and therefore actually restrict experience. What's the actual experience? The thought, I'm going back to my former self, is just a thought. Right? You don't even know if that's true. Right? It's just this feeling is familiar. There's a resistance. You don't want to feel it anymore, right? Which is also in the mind. Because what's the point of saying, I don't want to feel it? It's already here. You're feeling it. So stay here. Stay in this present moment. Stay where you are and be with the moment without thought, without thinking, right? Without the story, because that's what hooks you, right? And the story will include the resistance to what you feel. I don't want to feel this. Well, that too is just a thought. It's too late. You're already feeling it. Consciousness has already allowed it in. And so when you allow it like that, you're becoming stronger and more adept at clearing away the muddiness, clearing away the the thinking about what's happening and having the direct experience of what is happening. And when you really are there, and the resistance is falling or fallen away, there's no suffering. There's simply feeling. And at that point, you're sitting in the place of mastery, the place of wisdom, because now you're looking as consciousness at conditioning rather than struggling with conditioning, trying to get to consciousness. You're simply looking at what's happening, right? Without any reaction whatsoever. That's the place we get to. And this is how you do it, right? The reaction is all in the story the mind has laid on it. It's not actually real. It's not actually what's happening in this moment. And this moment has no connection to the past or the future. The past and the future are mind, right? The body isn't talking about, oh, I had this feeling before. The mind is, right? It doesn't matter if it looks, smells, walks exactly like a previous feeling. It's not a previous feeling. It's this feeling. And if you really look close, you'll find it's not the same. It's different. But the mind says, oh, it's that again. And off goes the story, right? That's why these meditations where we set aside thought are absolutely critical. We have to see that thought is delusional. It never knows what's actually happening, ever. Once consciousness has really liberated itself from that, at that point, the mind begins to become the servant of consciousness. And now the thoughts that get expressed are actually expressing the truth of your being rather than the falsity of your being. Does that help, Roberto? I'm very happy this voice caused me all this turmoil because I had the chance to meet you, GP. Huge thank you. Oh, how sweet. Thank you, Roberto. Yes, it's you're really meeting yourself. Right? I'm just kind of it's over there, that way, that way. Kind of wandering around without a map, and I'm going, here's the map. It's right over there. Here you go. Walk that way. Yeah, am I getting there? Yes, you're getting there. I'm so glad to have met you too. Bridget said, I enjoyed that very much. How often do you meditate, GP? Formally? Um, I don't really meditate formally. Usually when I wake up first thing in the morning, which is usually early, I just sit there very quietly, doing exactly what I just guided you through. We just go to that place that's beyond thought, beyond feeling, beyond sensation, to that sense of simply being aware of being aware. And there's nothing there but you. Um, and that's what I do. And different times during the day, it'll just come up. It's very spontaneous, right? I would say consistently it happens first thing in the morning and last thing at night, pretty consistently. Uh, but again, for me, it just happens. Now, I've been doing it for a lot of years, right? So it's not the kind of thing that I recommend, hey, just let it happen. Um, because there's still a lot of resistance to it. in the beginning because the mind always wants to go back to its old habit patterns. So um, don't turn it into this discipline ritual thing. I got to spend 2 hours with my ass on a cushion wearing funny clothes, um, because that will that will create so much resistance that you'll get very little results out of it. Um, when you do a meditation like this, where I guide you, right? And as you said, you enjoyed that very much. Well, don't we naturally gravitate towards what we enjoy, right? So the mission then becomes, well, how do I get to the point where I don't need GP's guidance anymore? That I can go there, just kind of go there on my own. That's the practice, and you'll find that sometimes it won't feel enjoyable, but if you actually will just stay with that for a minute and notice that that feeling of it not being enjoyable is really habit energy of the mind, because it's trying to, because the mind never wants to be in the present moment. Well, it doesn't want to be in the present moment because in the present moment the mind doesn't exist. The mind is nothing but thoughts about the past and the future. So don't make it into a rigorous discipline. Um, but if there's some resistance to it, set aside 20 minutes, 10 minutes at different times of the day to just stop, close your eyes, and become aware of being aware. I'm, I'm aware of my thoughts, and I'm aware of my emotions, and I'm aware of sensation going on. I'm even aware of this feeling that I should be doing something else other than sitting here with my eyes closed, being aware of being aware. And just realize that everything is appearing in this awareness, and the awareness is always there. That's when meditation becomes all the time. Or St. Paul said, pray without ceasing. Right? It just becomes it's a way of life. Right? And there's always, attention's always going to get grabbed and get in in engagement, right? Because we have to. We have to engage with things in the world. We got jobs, we got families, we got things going on, right? But the thing is that we always want to remind ourselves that, oh, right, I'm engaged, that I can always bring my attention back here until the that boundary where my attention's out, my attention's in disappears, and it all just kind of settles in to this beautiful empty space where stuff is going on and you're fully aware of being aware at the same time. Bridget, you said this is where ideas come from. Do you need to ask questions of seeking answers? Yes. All creativity, all spontaneity, all fresh original inspiration comes from the emptiness, right? And look, this isn't just esoteric or out there at all. A fresh inspiration can't come from the same old thoughts, right? And the same old thoughts is what the mind is. So when you have gone to this place where you're not engaged in the story, the ongoing story, there's an opportunity for fresh inspiration to arise. Right? That's the source of creativity. Creativity doesn't hold on to anything. It's creative. Why? Because it's not the same thing, right? Whereas the mind is nothing but the same thing. That fresh inspiration arises. It's really energetic, and it influences the mind. It's like an invisible hand beginning to shape ideas. The ideas give expression to the inspiration. They are not the inspiration. The inspiration itself can take all sorts of different forms. Like the same song can be played on a piano or a guitar or sung a cappella, right? Same song. Oh, look at that. The very first time I had a little break in the a little break in the connection. Um, the inspiration of a spiritual insight will come out of my mouth in one way. It'll come out of your mouth in another way, right? Like this is a jar but depending on which language you're speaking, it's a different word. But the essence is the same. The essence is an invisible inspiration that arises out of this emptiness. Because the nature of true emptiness, the shunyata, is creativity. Look around. The whole universe emerged from there. Now, as far as do you ask questions? You can. Yes, you absolutely can. In that space, you can pose a question. Right? Now, when you do that, I do a lot of this in inner reconciliation. Um, when you pose a question, the moment you ask the question, your mind's going to jump in. Your mind is going to jump in for sure and give you what it already knows. Right? Now, if you get if you're not what's the word I'm looking at? If you're not used to thinking of it in this way, you'll start following the mind, trying to find an answer. Right? You pose the question, then you let it go. It's got to come from some other place. Right? And we all need answers. And believe me, the need for the answer is only arising because the answer's already there. The question and answer are dependent arisings. You cannot have one without the other. They're two faces of the same coin. This idea that we can have a question and it doesn't have an answer is absurd. If there's an ear, there must be a voice, right? So you pose the question, and oftentimes you don't even have to pose the question verbally. It's already in your heart if the question is there. And that energy is already there. But if you pose it verbally within your mind, it's like prayer, right? So you're saying, here it is, show me. And then you just let go of it. Right? It's really simple. Looking for answers and need to know how to ask the questions. Uh, Thank you ever so much, GP. I'm tired of the mental chatter that keeps me in the same place and position. What kind of questions are best to ask? Or how do you ask for help or answers? Does it need to be an open ended question? Um, no. It could be any question you want. The idea has to be an open ended question. That's kind of like the um, more the law of attraction manifestation kind of crowd. Um, believe me, if there's a question that to be asked, it's already in your heart energetically, right? And that's the real source of it. That's the real essence of it, right? So you cherish it, right? Right? If there's a feeling of I've got to have this answer, that whole energy of desperation creates an inner conflict, doesn't it? An inner turmoil, right? There's no faith in that. There's no there's no energy in that. There's no playfulness in that. If there's an ear, there must be a voice, right? As Rumi put it beautifully, he said, "The power that brought me here must bring me home." That's exactly what you're experiencing. Okay? So cherish the question, but don't be attached to it or an answer. That's how you love life and maintain your intimacy with life, but also your detachment from life, because you're beyond any question. And remember, the answer is coming from you, right? Just like the question did. So, are they not one and the same? It becomes a marvelous way of exploring the truth of being, the unified truth of being, where question and answer are one. You cannot have you cannot have a question if there's no answer to it. The universe doesn't work that way. That would be hell. It'd be chaos, right? Everything is a dependent arising. We just believe because it's experienced over time. We believe, oh, I might not get an answer. Absolutely, you will get an answer. But your job is to have absolutely no preconceived notion of so what that answer should be. So you are totally open. That's creative, right? If you're having, I need an answer, and your mind has already got this little narrow field of what that answer needs to be, the answer, if it's outside that field, can't get in. So break down the bounds, break down the barriers. And you do that with love. Love the question, right? Not the feeling of, I need an answer, but just love the question. Let the question itself transform your inner environment and bring you to the place where the answer is just self evident. Does that help, Bridget? Thank you for that. Robbie, in recent meditations, I've confirmed what you said, that I know myself to be, yet cannot see myself. I guess now I just need to teach my mind to accept that it can't perceive my beingness. Um, yeah, that's kind of a good way to see it, but a better way to do it, you're not really teaching the mind. The mind will always just respond to you and your energy. What you're doing is you're noticing how the mind is always looking for some kind of an object, something concrete it can grab onto and hold, say, this is me. And just notice that that's the habit energy of the mind. That's what minds do. Everything is an object, right? It cannot deal with pure, spacious, open emptiness. It can't, right? So instead, you just notice how the mind wants to identify you with a form. And you'll notice that you are aware of that. And the you that's aware of that is not a form, but yet it perceives absolutely everything, everything except itself, because you're the imperceivable emptiness. Right? So it's not really teaching your mind to accept that it cannot perceive your beingness. The mind is not an independently functioning thing. It's just a flow of thoughts. There's nothing there to teach. The teaching or the transformation of that flow of thoughts happens automatically when it no longer gets your attention. Right? But this is a really good thing, because you'll over time you'll begin to see exactly how subtle that identification actually is, and that there's even a subtler level that's slightly below mind, where the actual energetic identification actually lives. In Buddhism, they refer to it as the repository consciousness. In Sanskrit, it's referred to as the vasanas. It is just this very subtle place that wants to be something. Okay? And that's kind of the underlying energy. But just stay with that. Can the perceiver be perceived? No. Then you don't need to teach your mind anything. Who am I? I'm obviously the one perceiving. Who am I? Who is the I that was there even before the thought I arose? Thank you all. Are you all still with me? I did have a little blackout. Oh, you make it sound so easy, GP. I've been in the blackness, which was amazing, where I could not see or feel, experience anything, just blackness. It was awesome. I got there with a practitioner when I had been diagnosed with cancer. Practitioner, like Christian Science practitioner, Science of Mind practitioner, kind of practitioner, um, or an energy healing practitioner. Just kind of curious. It was amazing. Yes, it certainly is. Would like to get there more often. I guess practice, practice, practice is the answer to getting there more often. Um, no, it's not. It's not. That is not the way. The way is much simpler than that. Oh my God! Thank God we don't have to practice that much. Um, what you experienced was not this emptiness. Oh, it's an EFT practitioner. Okay, what you experienced. It's all sorts of different kinds of practitioners. No, it's okay. It's okay. Um, what you experienced was you without anything else. This is what it takes, some non-dual um, uh, uh, knowledge, for lack of a better word, to understand. Because for most people, it's just a space you get into, right? It's not a space you get into, because then you're still there. In which case, it'll come and go. And if it comes and goes, then it's not real. It's not the ultimate. It isn't what you really are after. That isn't you in the space. That's you. You without you. You without all the thoughts of you. When all those thoughts are gone, and EFT is a very helpful way to do it, what remains? just you, right? That blackness, that emptiness that was wonderful, right? That you just loved, right? Were you not there? What then are you that was aware of even that empty, subtle? You must be even more empty and more subtle because you were there to see it. Now, who are you? You don't have to get to the blackness, right? Because in fact, whether you're experiencing the blackness, the emptiness, the void, the bliss, or you're experiencing all sorts of activity and chaos, are you not still there? You're beyond bliss and chaos. You're beyond that because none of it could be there without you. Yes, it was bliss, just bliss, nothingness. I had no weight, no feelings, didn't know whether I was sitting, standing, or anything. Just nothingness, right? And who are you? I was experiencing that. Who are you? Just the observer, but the observer can't be observed. This this is the threshold. Even though a lot of spiritual practices get right up to that emptiness, get up to samadhi, you know, whether it be EFT or some other kind of practice, can get to this place. Okay? But who are you? That question will only be asked in satsang, which is what this has become. It wasn't meditation, now it's satsang. Who is that? Well, I think on that note, I'm going to let it go for now. Um, those of you, I hope you're all on my mailing list. I've been talking about this workshop. An EFT workshop I'm doing tomorrow. Actually, what I should do is give you guys all the link where it's going to be. Let's see, it's tomorrow. If you're on YouTube, really quick, let me get you guys the link. Copy. Quit back here. Okay, back here. There's the link. Oh, you may not. Those of you who are on YouTube, if you could copy that, because sometimes, because this, I can, when I text, I can text to. It shows up on YouTube. It doesn't show up on Facebook. Anyway, just go to youtube.com/GP Walsh. It will also be broadcast on Facebook, but I don't know exactly how to link directly to it. If anybody does, please let me know. The announcement was there. So thank you for your clarification. I guess I'm coming from some place that teach to antagonize the whole idea of mind, which clearly creates conflict and struggle. Yeah. You don't need to teach it, right? You need to disidentify it with it. Once it's disidentified, the thing that's holding it in the pattern that you think it has to be taught dissolves. And what does it do? It immediately begins to gravitate around you. It immediately begins to gravitate around the real you. That's works. You don't have it. The non-dual path is so easy. That's why people like me like it. It's not elaborate. All these, I went through that whole period of time. These, very strict austerities and hours, and it's like it's not necessary. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you'll join me tomorrow. It's at 2:00, 2:00 Eastern time, which makes it like 7:00 in the evening in London, and like maybe 8 further on into Eastern Europe. So thank you all for joining me. I hope you're there. And I'm also gearing up to do a training for any of you who would be interested in actually becoming, learning how I do EFT. I'm going to be doing a really in-depth training starting next week, the week after. I still got a bunch of people because I actually want to talk to people before we do it. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Love you all. Namaste.